test, a manual sweep test to measure the grades of effusion. So trace to 0 effusion is really what we're talking about. And then we start them in a walk jog, right? So they'll be doing a walk jog on a treadmill in very controlled circumstances. And we monitor them for swelling, so increase in effusion, and knee pain, because knee pain, their knees shouldn't hurt. So, I mean, it's okay if their muscles hurt, but their knees shouldn't hurt. So if they start to do this and their knees swell up or their knees hurt, we've got to back them down. Okay, so presumably they've been walking around and doing but once they start to run, to jog really is what they're doing. And then we advance them. We've published this running program a bunch of different times, most recently in JOSPT in 2012, a paper by Doug Adams. So it's actually the soreness rules, the effusion testing, and the running progression are all in that article, which is open source at JOSPT. So it's a whole package. And then a sort of garden variety ACL with no other injuries, probably as early as 12 weeks, right? Somewhere in that range. But if they've had a chondral injury or a meniscus repair, have any concomitant ligamentous injury, it's going to be delay, right?
And so then you mentioned the walk, run on the treadmill.
Yep.
Then have you got some tips for how you sort of get beyond that? So are there specific exercises that you get them to do? How do you sort of progress them from treadmill, walk, run to what distance are you doing? And then how long should they wait, or how are you progressing?
So what we're trying to get them to do is to be able to jog or run on the treadmill for 2 miles continuously. And then we move them to a track where they'll run the straightaways and walk the curves. And then finally to road or field or court. So the progression's probably 2 months typically, start to finish. They starting in the clinic and moving. I mean, certainly people can do it faster, but it's on the order of a couple months, that sort of mid in-clinic phase of ACL rehab.
Okay. We've also had a question come through on Twitter, I think, asking about tips for open chain exercises and closed chain exercises for the quads. And I'm thinking that we want to, now we've moved from early phase rehab, we're getting to return to run, now really into that middle part where we're trying to push strength and low resistance, high resistance, low load. Yep. What kind of exercises are you prescribing at this period of time?
All right, so it sort of depends on what instrumentation you have, right? So almost everybody has a knee extension machine or a NK table, something that's, where you can put weights down near the ankle and have them, put the resistance down there and then have them just do open chain knee extension. So we do that. Classic low rep, high load. And the key there though is progression, right? So if they're able to do 3 sets of 10 pretty easily, then you've got to increase the weight. And that means you have to be paying attention, right? And really moving this up. So we see this very often where people are doing the same exact exercise over and over and over and over, and there's no progression. So the progression is really the important thing here. So you can do it on a knee extension machine. I guess you could do it with bag weights if that's all that you have. Resistance bands, and then the other questions of dynamometers, isokinetic dynamometers, isometric dynamometers, and you can do so isotonics, isometrics, isokinetics, eccentrics are important too. So we basically throw the whole shooting match in it, and then people do leg press. Just be really careful about leg press early, because patients, you don't really need to use your quads to do a leg press. So if their quads are weak, they're going to use all kinds of other lower extremity muscles to be able to do it, and you're not going to get yourself anywhere. So I wouldn't make that the mainstay of my quads treatment.
And I think that's also an important thing to remember when you're testing strength too, because
Yep.
some people will go, oh, I can test a 1 RM on a leg press.
Nope.
But you're much better off doing a 1 RM on a leg extension, doing an open chain.
Absolutely. 100%. There was a nice paper by Anthony Sinecor and his colleagues when he was at the University of Pittsburgh, and they actually tested handheld dynamometer with a like a mobilization strap holding it to the table, one RM on the knee extension machine, limited range, like 90 to 45, and then full range, leg press. And then the gold standard was the isokinetic dynamometer. And they found that the 1 RM was far and away the best. The others tended to overestimate the involved knees quad strength. And you don't ever want to do that, because then you discharge them, or you stop quad exercises earlier than you should, and you generally discharge them and clear them for play earlier.
Okay, so mid-phase, we're going strength, quads, but also not forgetting about the other major muscle groups like calves and hamstrings. Then, so let's move late phase now. So now we're starting to make that, or see that transition from the gym-based stuff onto the court or the field or whatever it is that the athlete is getting back to. During this time, how often are you checking in with an athlete? And how? So are you getting them to come into the clinic? Are you getting them to send you a text? How does that work?
So typically, all right, it sort of depends on what the athlete does and their play situation. So if they're playing in an environment where they have a strength and conditioning coach and a athletic trainer, we're going to transition them pretty early back to that side of the street. In our case, they're across the street from us. If they don't, that's another story. If they're really dependent on us for that, we'll probably see them more often. But we also can do some of this late stuff in groups, right? And they could also be discharged to a gym program. But we will, once we've discharged them, let's say it's 4 months, then we'll check them once a month, and generally bring, at least the first time and maybe the next, bring them in and make sure that we do a strength test. Because the one thing that we do see that's a harbinger of bad things to come is their quad strength goes down after they leave treatment. And so we want to really encourage them to keep that up. So that would be our biggest reason, I think, for a retooling. Come on back into the clinic for another couple weeks, is if their quad strength drops off.
Okay. We had a specific question about when can a soccer player start light soccer training, but I think we can broaden that and say, when is it okay for an athlete to start making that transition back to doing stuff that looks like their sport and is in their sports environment? How do we manage, or how do you manage that progression?
So we do a return to activity battery of tests. We have quad strength, 4 single leg hop tests, single hop for distance, crossover hop, 3 crossover hops for distance, triple hop for distance, and a 6-meter timed hop. And then we use 2 self-report questionnaires, just a single question global rating of knee function and the knee outcome survey activities of daily living scale. And they have to score 90% on all of those: quad strength, all of the hop tests, and the self-report questionnaires. At that point, they then begin this return to activity progression, or what our friend Stefano Della Villa would call on-field rehabilitation. So we get them out, and the very first step of that is agilities. And you want them to be able to do those agilities without any swelling and without any apprehension, right, or fear. You want to watch them go through that, but you also don't want them to have knee pain or swelling. So we're starting right there with that. And if they're able to go through the sort of standard agility battery, then we will progress them to going one-on-one, because the danger zone for ACLs is when you add an opponent, right? Nobody except like gymnasts and skiers really tear their ACLs when there's not an opponent, right? So